Hi everyone, Happy New Year. I'm just going to warn you that this is not going to be your sexiest podcast episode. um this episode, if you're watching, I present the charts. It's not edited. It's literally live. I have very little to no notes, dates. I really just wanted to provide a general overview of 2026. If you're looking for a more detailed overview of 2026, check out my 2026 year ahead horoscopes. You basically have your own rising sign portal. So for example, if you're a Libra rising, you're going to have your own Libra rising portal. Every month is its own section where each month has your own presentation, going through the transits visually in a simple but stimulating way. And then there is so many additional supplemental material that I've sort of vetted. Some of it's my own, some of it's other astrologers, that can really support those transits and understanding what is going on with more depth if you're interested in information and learning and all of that. I also add a little bit of the human design element of it, how you can really tune into your inner authority, to know what really resonates, what doesn't, to kind of guide you through. And it's really, you get over 2 hours of material just for your rising sign, just for the presentations. And then the additional supplemental material is, endless hours. And I think I go over 60 plus transits for the year. So in this general overview, I only want to discuss what I think are the major trigger points throughout 2026 that are connected. So there's sort of these interesting points throughout 2026 that I want to talk about. In addition to, my monthlies, or if you've purchased the portal, or you want to purchase the 2026 year ahead portal that has so hours and hours and hours of information, that gives such a more detailed view month by month, that this is more of a wide perspective, how are all of these things connected? How can we we zoom in on these transits, but how can we zoom out and gain a wider perspective on what actually is transpiring? In some ways it can help. It can help when we kind of pull out and we see the bird's eye view. So, this is a general overview. It is not conclusive. I want to warn you, it's live. All of my stuff is pretty much live, but this is very, very live. I'm in the midst of holiday season. So a lot of this is just, we're going live. I did blank out the transit on the left side on my software just to prevent confusion if you're watching, so that the dates and the transit on the right, if you're watching, are the transits that I'm actually pulling up. So I just wanted to verify that. I didn't edit it out when I pull up the human design components that I go to in the general overview. So don't let that overwhelm you. But it's a pretty raw, not so edited approach, but I wanted to get this out there for you guys to provide the broad perspective as we go through the monthly horoscopes, where things get more detailed. And certainly if you purchase my 2026 year ahead portal year ahead horoscope, there is 60 plus transits presented to you that go through, plus some supplemental material that I might add more to throughout the year if I feel inspired or I feel very aligned to it. So definitely check that out. The link to purchase that year ahead portal, where it's not a guide, it's not a downloadable guide, it's literally like an online course for your 2026 year ahead horoscope. So there's a lot in there. So definitely check that out. The link is in the description below if you haven't checked that out already. Anyways, again, this is general. I'm not going over every transit. I'm not going over every eclipse. I'm just going over, I think, the major points of 2026 to really pay attention to as we move through the more detailed transits in the monthly horoscopes, etc. So anyways, let's jump in. Hello, Leo risings. So kicking off sort of this first major point in 2026, where we get to about mid-January. Now, if you're not watching, I'm on January 16th, but in all honesty, some of you could really be feeling this a few days before, a few days after. So really roughly around this time with the applying and separating aspects of the variety of planets at play here. But what I want to point out about mid-January 2026, we have a new moon forming in Capricorn. We also have Mercury, an exalted Mars, and Venus in your Capricorn 6th house of daily work and or health routines. So there's a lot happening, yes, in your 6th house. But what I want to point out, if we're looking at sort of the generalized overarching themes and cycles to look at with 2026, is that these planets, even this new moon forming in Capricorn, they're forming a closing sextile. So Mercury, Mars, and Venus are all forming a closing sextile to Saturn in your Pisces 8th house. So for time purposes, I'm going to focus more on Mars, also because Mars is exalted, but Mars is also doing some other things that I want to point out too. So again, for time purposes, I'm going to focus on this exalted Mars, this honored guest in your Capricorn 6th house of daily work and or health routines that have really heated up this area for some time now. And the closing sextile to Saturn is interesting because the last Mars-Saturn conjunction that took place in Pisces, initiating this story that's been playing out, that now is at the closing sextile. It's at the closing aspect of this story that's been playing out for a lot of you, that was initiated around April of 2024. So back around April of 2024, Mars was conjunct Saturn, creating a new Mars-Saturn cycle that was going to play out up until roughly the beginning of 2026. So Mars is now in this closing sextile, again, starting to close out the story. Where are the opportunities to sort of close this thing out? So Saturn rules your 6th house of daily work and health routines. It also rules your 7th house of personal and professional partnerships, including marriage. So there could be this opportunistic sort of closing to what's been playing out in your personal and or professional partnerships. There could also be this opportunistic closing to sort of close out sort of health situation, work situation, routine that could also be impacting or could have impacted your growth and potential, your home, family, property, real estate situations that also may have been kind of sprinkled throughout the past couple years of this Mars-Saturn cycle. I also want to point out that Mars will also be forming the closing trine to Uranus in your Taurus 10th house of career, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. So as the story is kind of closing out, there's also this kind of potential to, an exalted Mars in Capricorn with a trine to Uranus is pretty stimulating. But I think the closing trine to Uranus in the 10th with Mars in the 6th house of daily work and health routines could also be an opportunity to create more flow, to maybe dissolve obstacles to motivations, desires, goals, to your career, your public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. That's playing into the overall growth and potential that's still playing out. So Mars, this isn't just a lot going on in Capricorn. I think when you really zoom out, you take a really far out perspective. This is playing into larger cycles that seem to be closing out things from the past couple years with these personal planets, especially Mars. And then simultaneously, this new moon, as this is sort of starting to close out, initiating in that 6th house. So based off of what might be closing out or coming to a close with what you've endured or sort of experienced the past couple years, that could have impacted personal and professional partnerships, your work, your health, your routines, etc. This could be a time where you see the opportunity to maybe dissolve obstacles, create more flow to where you want to go, as well as create sort of new beginnings and new opportunities around your overall vitality, your routines, and your work going into 2026. The other thing that I want to discuss before I get to April of 2026, because a lot of this, in my opinion, in mid-January, late January, I think is sort of setting the stage for April, where so much is going to happen in your Aries 9th house of growth and potential, which could involve travel, spirituality, higher knowledge, publishing, teaching, could be career related for some of you. Either way, I think this is sort of creating the closing out those stories with Saturn to initiate new cycles and new stories with Saturn and Neptune in Aries instead of Pisces over the past couple of years, or many years with Neptune. So again, this is an interesting time to pay attention to. Where are the opportunities? Where's the flow? Where can we start kind of closing out these old cycles, these old stories, and see the opportunity for the new that could be really kicking up and initiating come April 2026. But before I get to April, I want to talk about this really interesting eclipse on February 17th at 28 degrees. This new moon solar eclipse at 28 degrees in your Aquarius 7th house of marriage, if applicable, personal and professional partnerships. But what I really want to talk about with this is that it's not only square Uranus, so new beginnings and new opportunities with personal and professional partnerships that could initiate the action and change around career, business, public recognition, or what feels more fulfilling to you. But also, this new moon solar eclipse is ruled by Saturn. And Saturn is 3 days away from being exactly conjunct Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries, which is a critical degree, and I don't think has ever happened before in history. So Saturn and Neptune have been conjunct in Aries before, many, many, many years ago, but not at 0 degrees, at that critical degree. So I think it is extremely important to point out how rare this Saturn-Neptune conjunction is at 0 degrees on the cusp of your 9th house of growth and potential. But at the same time, there is a Saturn-ruled new moon, new beginning solar eclipse in that Saturn-ruled Aquarius 7th house of personal and or professional partnerships. So this could really be that intermission of really strong new beginnings, like new connections, whether it's personal or professional, that It could be creating that innovation and change to your career, your business, your public recognition, or last minute innovation and change, because Uranus is going to make its final way out of your 10th house of career, or what brings you fulfillment, in a few months. But I just think that the Saturn-Neptune is conjunction at 0 degrees is so rare. And it to be happening at the same time as a Saturn-ruled eclipse with Mars and Saturn in mutual reception. So they've swapped homes. They're in each other's homes. So that tells me that there is probably very strong 7th and 9th house connections going on with this eclipse and Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Just because the ruler of the 9th, Mars, is in Saturn-ruled house. So they swapped homes. And so they're sort of trying to communicate with each other. But I think this is a very interesting eclipse, a very interesting connection with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, and how this eclipse is also playing a part with maybe creating some sudden change, sudden innovation to sort of the career, the public recognition, where you want to go before Uranus makes its final ingress into that Gemini 11th house. Now getting to April. Excuse me. So again, mid-April, I'm actually going to start right about April 11th, April 12th is when Mars joins Neptune and initiates a new cycle with Neptune. But what I want to point out about this is that Mars is in rulership. So this time, Neptune is reporting to Mars. Mars owns this house. And in previous years, when Neptune was in Pisces, Mars didn't have much essential dignity in Pisces. This time it does. So I think this initiation into sort of a new story and a new cycle playing out over the next 2.5 years with the Mars cycle involving Neptune is going to be a little bit different. But I think this could be an interesting time of sort of dissolving or surrendering what no longer sort of supports the growth and potential, what new action, new desires and motivations might be playing into a new ideal around knowledge, travel, spirituality, teaching, publishing, growth and potential. That very well could be career related as well for some of you. And then shortly after Mars joins Neptune, Mars starts to apply to a conjunction with Saturn, creating a new cycle with Saturn. And again, in previous years, Saturn was in Pisces, didn't have much essential dignity there, and neither did Mars. This time, Mars does. And the recent example that I kind of came up with this Mars-Saturn conjunction in Aries around April 16th, April 17th, 18th even, for some of you. But it's sort of like foreign exchange students. So Saturn is in fall by essential dignity. It's sort of in a foreign country, doesn't speak the language, and this is Mars country. This is the home of Mars. So it's sort of as if you're a foreign exchange student, you go to the home. It's their country, it's their home. They speak the language, they know what they're doing, they know where they're going, and that's Mars. And Saturn is sort of the foreign exchange student, where it's like, I know a little bit, I need to learn, but, maybe taking alternate routes, maybe, gaining new perspectives. It has to learn how to operate in a very different way that it's used to. So Mars is a little, in my opinion, a little bit like, listen up. This is the plan of action. This is the desire. This is the motivation. And I think with Mars also ruling your Scorpio fourth house of home, family, property, and real estate, some of you could also be seeing the desire to look at like what home situation, what renovation, relocation, relationships with family, sort of those home themes are going to support that growth and potential in your life. But Saturn is there saying, okay, the way we're going to build, the way we're going to be disciplined about this might be a little foreign. It might be a little different. It might feel like very new territory for a bit. So I just wanted to point out that new cycle. But also we have Mercury, Neptune, Saturn, the moon applying to a new moon here, as well as Chiron, all in the house of Mars. So they are all reporting to Mars. This is huge. So, excuse me. I think this is really important when we have all this new wave of energy, new cycles beginning, and Mars is now in rulership, where again, in previous years, it has not been. So I think Mars is going to come in hot and say, listen up, this is what we're going to do. And right around April 17th, we have a new moon forming at 27 degrees in your Aries 9th house of growth and potential. Technically conjunct Chiron at 26 degrees. I think this is important. If you've been following me for a while, I don't talk about every full moon or new moon, but this new moon I'm talking about in this particular podcast episode, because in my opinion, it's in relation to the new cycle Mars is forming with Neptune and Saturn. Because this new moon is still reporting back to Mars. It's in the house of Mars. So whatever new beginning, new idea, planting new seeds around growth and potential, that could be career related. I think it's directly tied to these new cycles playing out over the next 2.5 years, even though new moons tend to play out over the next 5 or 6 months. Now, this new moon is technically conjunct Chiron. So I think some of us are going to love this and some of us are not. I think some of us love the Chiron energy. We love, the improvement. We love the wounds. We love kind of exploring those things. And then other times we don't. Either way, I actually sat with this for quite a while. And I started to explore the human design gate that this is transiting or activating. So, to show you and not overwhelm you, hopefully, the new moon on April 17th. So, sun and moon conjunct. We have the sun at gate 3, the moon at gate 3. Gate 3 in human design has a lot of, nuances and things to it. But in reference to this, gate 3 has a lot to do with creating more structure and innovation away from chaos. So I think in many ways, whatever new cycles are forming here that could be involving work, health, relationships, connections, personal or professional, playing into overall growth and potential, also what foundation, family, those types of themes could also be playing into it for some Leo risings. There is this with the new moon and Chiron technically being at gate 3, it could be a time where a lot of Leo risings, like you're seeking the innovation or the new ways or the new structures, especially with Saturn, that could provide those innovative solutions and new paths that feel less chaotic. The past couple years, really for many years now, there's been a lot of chaos in the world, but there's also been a lot of chaos individually. And I think this is a really interesting moment for a lot of Leo risings, because this is the first time in maybe, 7 years or so, that Saturn is visible and in a positive aspect to your first house of self. It was visible when it was in Aquarius, but it was opposing yourself. So this is the first time in a long time where it might feel new. It might feel a little crunchy. It might feel a little like foreign territory, right? Saturn's in fall. But with this new moon coming along when Mars is creating these new cycles in the area of growth and potential, I think this is a time where this could be an opportunistic time to kind of create some plan of action or desire or motivation away from the chaos that's surrounded a lot of Leo risings for many years, whether it was internal or external. And that may feel new to you. That may feel, as a Leo rising, I'm kind of experiencing this myself, where I'm witnessing it and I'm able to see the choice, if that makes sense to some of you. So I think this new moon could provide a lot of innovative solutions and new paths to the growth and potential that feels hopefully less chaotic, but that may feel foreign, that may feel new. It might feel a little weird. The other thing that can come up with gate 3 is like the fear of getting it wrong, right? Like the fear of looking messy through the newness or struggling with the experimentation process. But I think April overall is a really good time to remind yourselves that it's a process. It takes time, and that just because you're experimenting, just because things are messy, doesn't mean it's necessarily chaotic or it's always going to be. I think, it's okay to, I think we're all going to be feeling this collective newness or a lot of initiating energies going into 2026, certainly in the spring of 2026. Now moving on to July 18th, 19th, the days leading up really to the 19th. But I want to point out around July 18th, July 19th. Well, July 18th is technically when the Uranus-Pluto trine is exact. I think a lot of us are going to feel this to varying intensities throughout all of 2026, even into 2027, 2028. But because this is exact around July 18th, it could be more potent. It could be a little bit stronger. But I think a lot of us, especially if you're more sensitive, you could really feel this in June, going into July even, sort of that buildup. But what I love about this for Leo risings is that the Uranus-Pluto trine at 4 degrees. So Uranus at 4 degrees in your Gemini 11th house of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals. Trine Pluto at 4 degrees in your Aquarius 7th house of personal and professional partnerships, including marriage. could create this opportunity to rapidly accelerate the innovation, the transformation between your connections with others and your social network and your long-term goals. So I think this could be a time where I think a lot of Leo risings could start to see either their social network change. You could also see a lot, maybe some of you are seeing it really accelerate, expand, innovate. Some of you could really find yourselves connecting with other people that in the past you never would, right? Things like your connections with your social network could completely change or innovate. You could find yourselves making connections with people that are totally new. And your connections to your personal and professional partnerships could be the source of empowerment and transformation that create flow or dissolve the obstacles to innovate and change your social network and your long-term goals. So maybe they're the source to meeting new people or connecting you with new people, or maybe they're playing a very strong anchor role of empowerment in your life that allows you that platform to start expanding or navigating uncharted territory or innovating how you connect with people. Or maybe they're inspiration to connecting with new social network and creating new long-term goals. Either way, I actually, this isn't conclusive, but I actually really like the Pluto-Uranus trine between your 11th and 7th, because it's, it's about connecting with others and the social aspect and the dreams and the aspirations. Where in previous years, Uranus going through your Taurus 10th house, it was an angular house. It created a lot of squares. It caused a lot of, destabilizing aspects, especially to the area of partnership and the self and home and family. So I think this is when a lot of Leo risings could start to feel that I can see the change. Like I can feel more of that flow. Now, I will say this could also be overstimulating for a lot of Leo risings. So it's in air. And this could just happen very quickly. One thing I noticed when Uranus did its original dip into Gemini over the summer of 2025, my nervous system was on fire. I had an eye twitch for 2 months. I was just so stimulated and but in a good way. It felt inspiring. I got so much work done and I created so much, but it was definitely, I think it brought awareness to me that I can now message to you that this could also rapidly accelerate some overstimulating energy around this time, especially connecting with tons of people and stuff going on with partnership and stuff like that. So if that's something that that resonates or you kind of felt, just be aware of that. But the next thing I want to point out around this time is the Jupiter-Pluto opposition. A lot of people are asking me about this Jupiter-Pluto opposition, where Jupiter will have just recently entered your Leo first house of the self, the body, the physical identity, appearance, etc. And it will be opposing Pluto, empowerment and transformation in your Aquarius 7th house of personal and professional partnerships, including marriage. And Jupiter-Pluto oppositions can create power struggles typically. But that's not, from my personal experience, that's not always the case. Oppositions can just make us feel like we have to be in two different places at once. So there could be a part of you that really, after Jupiter going through the 12th, you could really start to feel ready to want to focus on yourself and your body and just being, your shiny, vibrant self, expanding the body and expanding your creativity and self-expression. And, but then that also, you might feel temporarily around this time, that takes away from the empowerment and transformation you're really seeking to with your connections with others or within your partnerships. Or there could be something playing out in your partnerships that's requiring a lot of focus, a lot of care, a lot of empowerment, transformation. That could be feeling like it's taking away from that expansion you want to focus on yourself. So with oppositions, it's always say like, find the balance. With that, I think that's a lot easier said than done. However, I'm here to help you. So the one thing I want to point out is Jupiter in Leo at 4 degrees, Uranus in Gemini at 4 degrees, Neptune in Aries at 4 degrees, and Pluto in Aquarius at 4 degrees. So if you have anything at 4 degrees, this could be a very pivotal player in July. Or it could be playing a major, even midpoint, merging some of these players, merging the energy of these. But again, for time purposes, I'm not going to go into the details of that. So my point is, with this Jupiter-Pluto opposition across your first house of self and the 7th house of the other or partnership, you have Uranus and Neptune making opportunistic sextiles and trines to Jupiter and Pluto in the opposition. So whenever there's an opposition, I try to look for the sextiles and trines from the outsider planets in the background that are playing supportive roles to help balance the oppositional energy. So with Uranus in your Gemini 11th house of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals, again, I already touched on the trine to Pluto, where, your personal and professional partnerships or the partnerships that you really want to attract for that empowerment and transformation in your life could create the stage to really innovating and changing, new connections, creating new connections with other people. Don't underestimate your partnerships or new connections and how they can connect you with other people you normally wouldn't be connected with, that can rapidly innovate your long-term goals and your social network over the next 6-7 years. So I already touched on that trine. Uranus is also sextile Jupiter in your first house of self. So whatever maybe new connections, innovation, change to, who you want to surround yourselves with, your long-term goals, it could directly create opportunity to expanding yourself in the world. So notice who you connect with and how that just can kind of naturally create opportunities, ones that don't even have to be like formal or professional opportunities, but just even like internal supportive opportunities to expanding yourself in the world and taking independent action towards the expansion and abundance you want to create. Neptune in your Aries 9th house of growth and potential will also be trine this Jupiter in your first house of self. So really looking at sort of having more compassion and empathy to allow yourself to explore new knowledge, new spirituality, new ideals. What's the new ideal some of you are seeking regarding knowledge, teaching, publishing, travel, spirituality, any of those growth and potential themes that could also be career related, that's forming or could be a source of inspiration to expanding yourself in the world. So sometimes it's like when we expand our mind and we travel or we learn something new or we write or we teach someone, it naturally has this expansive effect on our identity, our appearance, and sort of how we move through the world with that Jupiter in the first. I will also say Jupiter-Neptune trines. I think this could be really inspiring. This could be really creative and inspiring. That could also sort of that creativity, that inspiration that you could get from spirituality or travel or knowledge, publishing, teaching, again, that could be career related, could just be naturally creative and inspiring that supports the expansion of you in the world. And then lastly, this Neptune is sextile this Pluto in that Jupiter-Pluto opposition. So Neptune-Pluto sextiles, generally speaking, again, these are generational planets. It can be very supernatural. It can be very mystical. It can be, pay attention to how, like, your new ideals around your spirituality, what you're learning, what you're seeking, growth and potential, travel, etc., that could provide opportunity to almost support that transformation and empowerment with your connections with others. So it's like this Neptune is not only, Neptune can be tricky, I'm not going to lie, but I think this Neptune is not only trying to help create more flow and creativity and inspiration and even spirituality and ideals around what you're learning and what you're where you're traveling or teaching or publishing, to expanding the self. But I think it's also sort of creating this new ideal, or even for some of you who are intuitive, an opportunity to tap into more intuitive knowledge. Sort of just learning new things and then becoming almost intuitive. So the example I get is like someone could be an expert in something, but like for me, the difference between an expert and a genius is like a genius, like it's like they're intuitive with the knowledge. It's like they download it from another planet. It's sort of like they get their foundation, they get their baseline, and then they're able to just compute it and make connections that a book couldn't tell you how to do, if that makes sense. So whatever's going on with the higher mind and the spirituality and the growth and potential, it could really create opportunities for more empowerment and transformation within your marriage, within your personal and professional partnerships. So don't underestimate the Uranus-Neptune situation up here and how they're forming sextiles and trines to this Jupiter-Pluto situation, this Jupiter-Pluto opposition between you versus the other, or you and your partnerships. That could be personal or professional, that, this Uranus up here could really help innovate those friendships, those groups, the long-term goals that support you and your connections. But this Neptune sort of creating new ideals and new ways of connecting to knowledge and spirituality and travel could also be consequently supportive to you and your partnerships as well. So if you are feeling this oppositional energy as you get into, June, July, I would say see if you can focus more on those 11th house themes and 9th house themes, and see how those areas of your chart and thus life can help kind of create or dissipate that oppositional energy with Jupiter and Pluto. Now, moving on to August 28th. I don't want to miss this. So August 28th, we have a full moon, lunar eclipse at 4 degrees in your Pisces 8th house of transformation, or those long-term financial management goals. So investments, assets, debt, loans, partners, resources, if applicable. And so this full moon is illuminating this area. So something could be culminating, kind of closing out. Maybe it's something going on financially that you can kind of like close out, or through transformational work or partners' resources. But it's at 4 degrees. And again, mid-July, we had Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, all at that 4-degree mark. So now we have the sun and the moon in opposition, forming this full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces at that 4-degree mark. I mean, what's going on with 4 degrees? So, this could potentially be connected to what is transpired in July. And that is now sort of illuminating what's going on with personal or professional financial situations, mutual empowerment, transformational work, resources, etc. This full moon lunar eclipse is square Uranus in your Gemini 11th house of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals. So I think this full moon eclipse, this eclipse in particular, can be very stimulating. And stimulating in the way that it creates a lot of action and a lot of change. So this full moon lunar eclipse is highlighting your financial houses. And then the ruler of your second house of earned income and self-worth is technically combust, but it is exalted. So I'm not going to get into the super nitty-gritty details of essential dignity, but the fact that Mercury is exalted, it helps a little bit, in my opinion, with the combustion. And Mercury rules this Gemini 11th house of social network and long-term goals, where Uranus is in the middle of this T-square with this full moon eclipse here, the sun and moon in opposition. So with Uranus technically at the midpoint of the sun and the moon, I think, generally collectively, this could be a time where, you might have an urge for freedom or the urge for sudden change and action regarding your long-term goals or your social network. That could be self-worth related or could be financially related. So some of you might really want to kind of break free from certain groups, break free from certain connections, break free from certain long-term goals, as things are kind of shifting and changing. This Uranus has a lot of pressure on it to take action because it's not only getting a square from the sun and the moon in opposition with this full moon, but it is also getting a square from Mercury as well. So I think this full moon has a lot of opportunities to illuminate financial themes and have it sort of innovate and shift your connections with others through transformational work or self-worth themes, or create change and innovation and action through those financial situations that could be playing a part in those long-term goals. I also want to point out that at the time of this eclipse, Mars in your Cancer 12th house of the subconscious, sleep, behind the scenes, will be forming the opening square to Saturn in your Aries 9th house of growth and potential that initiated back in April of 2026. So remember, I mentioned in April, Mars was conjunct Saturn, creating a new cycle. Mars is now forming that opening square. So this is typically the time where like something happens. And I mean, it's also eclipse season. So it's usually the time where something happens and it pushes us to take action and to change. Now for you Leo risings, compared to the majority of other people out there, this action could be behind the scenes for you. This action could be less visible. It could even be just more mental. So, because Mars is in the 12th house, where it's a little bit, the 12th house is more hidden, it's averse to the first. It is, the subconscious thought patterns, the sleep, the behind the scenes work. So, some of you could be taking action regarding a home, family, property, real estate matter, or you could be taking action regarding the growth and potential area here, those ninth house themes that could be career related as well. But I think for a lot of Leo risings, it's going to be happening behind the scenes, or it's going to be happening like it's going to be a mental situation, where you also have the ruler of this full moon eclipse in Pisces is Jupiter. And Jupiter will also be forming a trine to Saturn up here in your ninth house. So this is interesting because although you have this eclipse highlighting your financial axis, the ruler of this eclipse is forming a constructive trine to Saturn. So I think there could be something going on where a lot of Leo risings are maybe having something, being highlighted financially, where you're making constructive decisions or creating constructive longevity around a financial situation or a partner's resources that could involve those Mars ruled areas with a square to Saturn. That could involve where you want to go with growth and potential, or could involve home, family, property, real estate themes going on around this time. So this is a really, really interesting eclipse for Leo risings, because I think in a way the constructive outlet is more visible to you this time compared to previous years. But I think you're going to be creating a plan of action or thinking about the desires and the motivations around whatever's playing out that could be impacted by financial themes coming up around this time. That could be shifting your long-term goals. It could be shifting who you want to surround yourselves with, who really supports those long-term goals. All right, just drop something. But the Jupiter-Saturn trine that's now visible to you, where Jupiter in previous years wasn't so visible to you when it was going through Cancer, and it ruling this full moon eclipse in the 8th house is particularly interesting to me. So again, I think there's a lot of squares going on with this eclipse. So this could be tense. This could be an opportunity for change that creates tangible results. And those tangible results you could see the tangible results from Mercury ruled areas, with Mercury involved in this T-square. And you could also potentially see the results from Mars ruled areas. So you could see the results happen financially, like your earned income and self-worth. You could also see I shouldn't say results, like outcome. Like pay attention to the earned income and self-worth that you want for a potential outcome. Pay attention to the social network and long-term goals as a potential outcome, or the outcome that you really desire with what's coming up and what's changing around this time to your long-term goals, your financial goals, as well as home, family, property, real estate themes that could be coming up for some of you around this time. Again, I'll break this down a little bit more when we get to the August monthly horoscope, but this is definitely something that if you're already kind of feeling something the first couple months of 2026, like I already kind of know what this might be for me. And we're in 2025, but this could kind of help put things into perspective and see where that constructive outlet is. Like, what's really going to give you longevity around your growth and potential and the expansion that you want to feel personally, how you want to move in the world, how you want to feel abundant, ultimately through that constructive trine with Jupiter and Saturn. As these squares are quick, but they're happening, and they're potential opportunities for major change, for tangible results. All right, closing out 2026, getting to, I'm gonna get to November. So yes, a lot's happening as we're getting into the fall with some retrogrades going on, but I'm gonna get to right about here. So around November 14th, again, days leading up to the 14th are very important with the applying aspects. But if you're watching for visible reasons, you will see the South Node, Mars, and Jupiter all at 25 degrees in your Leo first house of the self, the physical body, the identity, how you want to show up in the world. This is going to be very important for a lot of Leo risings around this time for a multitude of reasons. But again, I'm trying to stick to less of the specifics and more of the overarching bird's eye view themes. The first being Mercury and Venus have just recently gone direct because they both retrograded your Scorpio fourth house of home, family, property, and real estate, which is a Mars-ruled area. So, with these two personal planets, Venus and Mercury, having recently retrograded through Scorpio, a Mars-ruled area, they go direct, and then Mars goes over the South Node, either bringing you back to something or releasing something involving those Mars-ruled areas. Again, home, family, property, and real estate, or it could technically also involve growth and potential themes. Bringing you back to something regarding your growth and potential, or bringing you back to something regarding a home, family, property, real estate situation, or releasing something regarding any of those themes that no longer serve you, especially because this is taking place in your first house of the self. Jupiter is also involved in this. Jupiter rules your fifth house of creativity, self-expression, what brings you joy, children, if applicable to you. So this could be bringing you back to something regarding those themes. Or you could be releasing something that no longer serves you or individuals involved regarding those themes. Jupiter also rules this Pisces 8th house of transformational work or those long-term financial themes. So you could be coming back to financial themes, partners' resources, long-term financial goals or budgets, or you could be coming back to transformational work or releasing any of those themes that no longer support you. Either way, I would definitely pay attention to the past couple months. So, September, October, maybe even into a little bit of November, where Mercury and Venus were in shadow or going retrograde over this Mars-ruled area, Scorpio, your fourth house of home, family, property, and real estate, where a lot of you could have been reviewing and revising those themes, but also reviewing and revising, the foundation that is really going to support you, support your finances, support your career with what they rule. And then Mars going over the South Node, I think, is saying, hey, what are we gearing up to release that doesn't support us anymore? But what I want to point out is that both Mars and Jupiter are going to retrograde back to this 25-degree mark. So whatever is coming up, whatever you're sort of gearing up to release or coming back to, you're probably going to have time to review, revise, and perfect it over the coming months. Now, when I looked at the human design of this around November 14th, we have the South Node at gate 29. We have Mars at gate 29. And we have Jupiter at gate 29. So gate 29 is being activated with the South Node, Jupiter, and Mars all at this 25-degree mark in your Leo first house of the Self. So gate 29 is many things, but it's really, just to like quickly sum it up for time purposes, I think it's about committing to a process. And so I think you could be coming back to something regarding a home, family, property, real estate theme, or a growth and potential theme, or coming back to something regarding a financial situation or transformational work, or what really brings you joy, or children themes, if that's applicable to you. That is playing into committing to some sort of process or something that you want to play out in 2027. You could also, with the South Node, be releasing things that no longer serve you in order to commit to that process that you want to step into in 2027. I do think that there could be releasing something or coming back to something in order to commit to some plan of action that allows expansion for a lot of Leo risings. Not only to the self, with this happening in the first house of the self, but also the second house of earned income and self-worth going into 2027, because Mars is going to initiate its retrograde journey early in 2027 in your second house of earned income. Jupiter is going to enter your second house of earned income and self-worth about mid-2027. So this could be the point in time where you're coming back to something or you're releasing something that you've had some time to review and revise. But with Mars going into that retrograde, initiating in your second house of earned income, I think a lot of Leo risings could be going into 2027 really wanting to expand your finances, expand your self-worth, your innate gifts, your talents. But this could be the point in time where a lot of Leo risings, you're starting to commit to that process or starting to think about it. However, with gate 29 being activated, with the South Node, Mars, and Jupiter being at 25 degrees in your first house of self, I think closing out 2026, really thinking about and being aware of what you're saying yes to or committing to, and if it's really in alignment with your inner authority, with your guide. Is it truly in alignment to yourself? So that when you commit to the process of the expansion, the abundance, the desires, the motivations, going into 2027, it feels good to you. It feels, especially with the South Node going through that first and the North Node going through your seventh, it not only feels good to you, but it can also be beneficial to others as well.